I had a question at the beginning of the week or over the weekend from Tanya, one of the students, and she asked me a great question. And I think that what you were asking was kind of on a different tangent, but this is what I got from your question, and this is what I'm going with. So you ask me again later on, and I'll give you more details about yours. But the question is on the difference between acceptance and surrender, or maybe the interplay, the relationship between them. And this is like when I thought about what to call this talk, I thought, should we call it acceptance versus surrender? But then that doesn't sound right, because nothing should be versus anything here. So it's acceptance and surrender. And there are similarities and differences. So the general gist of it is that we are, as human beings, we are meant to fight and resist and struggle. And the Buddha says life is suffering and then you die. And that's it. There is no escaping struggle and fighting and strife. There is nobody who has ever existed who didn't have some kind of a struggle. Because at some point you die, and that is, has its inherent struggle, the struggle between life and death. But that doesn't mean that you have to buy fully into it and spend all of your days until the day that you die fighting and struggling and have your experience of existence be like this all the time. While it is natural, so is, somebody throws a punch at your face and you do this, and we train ourselves out of being able to do that into something that's better. So this in and of itself, this recognition of fighting is natural and struggle is natural, is acceptance. You have to accept it. And we want to be able to move beyond that, because if it always feels like this is happening, this is not a fun way to live life. You want to be able to have an easier time of it. So when I think of acceptance, what I think of is basically connecting to reality, connecting to this moment specifically. Because let's say that when I wrote in the blog, the article for this month, I used the example of knee pain. If your knee hurts and you just fight against the pain by continuing to do the same stuff that you've been doing, the same stuff that hurt your knee, then your knee pain will not go away. It's going to get worse. You're going to end up, in the hospital, surgery or worse. And this is the way that most of us live our lives. And it's either, I keep doing the same thing over and over again, which is Einstein's definition of insanity. I do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's like your knee will never heal if you keep doing the stuff that hurts it. It's only going to get worse. Or we go to the other side of it, which is I just completely give up. And when I say accept or surrender, I don't mean give up. And give up is also not connected to reality or to this moment. Giving up is like you're thinking about how it'll never get better, and so I'm just going to quit martial arts, never show back up again. Both of these are wrong. If your knee starts to hurt and then you think, I will just hurt like this for the rest of my life, then that's giving up. And it's a fantasy. And when you think of fantasy, you usually think of fantasy as like a nice thing. No, but what we fantasize about is at best equal parts great stuff and terrible stuff. I think for most people, we fantasize about terrible stuff. You are living in a fantasy world of everything is going to continue getting worse, and you take it to the absolute extreme of what you're experiencing right now. So neither one of these things is reality. Reality is my knee hurts. My knee hurts right now. That does not mean that my knee is necessarily going to hurt tomorrow. And it doesn't mean that my knee does not hurt. It means that my knee hurts. And acceptance is really just that. It is like the recognition of reality, of what is happening right now. And when you do that, it has this curious effect of of like making it kind of okay. When you realize that it is not necessarily all those terrible things that you make up, it is just what it is right now, then it's like a relief. You kind of take a breath and you realize, like, this is all right. It's probably not going to kill me. So then I can move on from there, and then I can, choose whatever direction I'm going to go. Okay, so maybe the direction I choose is I'm going to stop doing that kick with that knee. I'm going to start stretching or strengthening it or doing whatever it is that I need to do. And this is advice that half of you in this room or better should be listening to, because you all have like chronic knee pain. So think of it like that, like in terms of what is happening truly in this moment? What is there that I need to accept, be cognizant of, and just connect to? And then from there, kind of use that as a jumping off point. So acceptance is something that we're terrible at, but if you practice it, you can get it. And one of the differences that I talk about between acceptance and surrender is acceptance can be a function of your logical mind. It can be a function of your ego. It can be a function of just the normal person who you are. You can be smart enough to figure out how to accept things. So, being in the present moment is a great way of getting beyond the ego. Connecting to the moment is a great way of transcending. But simply recognizing from a very logical place, like, this is what's happening right now. Your ego, your normal humanity self, can do that thing. And your ego can start to plot like the next steps and realize what is the smartest thing to do in this situation. And that's all good. And when I say ego, a lot of times it's like a dirty word, and it's like you should not have an ego, and your ego is terrible. Your ego is what it is. We have to accept that you have an ego. Like all of us right now, we are in the ego. It's me and my ego talking to your egos right now. And maybe by the end of the talk, we'll get past that. But for now, this is where we are. She needs help, I think. And it's perfect. It's exactly where we are. It's exactly where we're supposed to be. So the difference between acceptance and surrender on a more fundamental level is like surrender is not really something that the ego can do, because the ego is so attached to things being the way that they are. It might be able to understand and accept right now what's happening, but to be able to go beyond that and transcend the ego is really the same thing as surrender. Surrender is like, the analogy that I used is if you're in the ocean and you're being tossed around by the waves, and your instinct to start off is just to fight against it. And you in the middle of the ocean in a storm being thrown around, pretty much nothing that you do is going to work very well. So you just fight harder, and you just flail your arms and legs around, and you tire yourself out, and you probably end up drowning in that situation. And that's one way to get to surrender. Or you recognize, hey, I am in the ocean. I am being thrown around right now by the waves, and it's okay. It is what it is supposed to be. There's no getting around it, so I accept it. And then I decide, I accept, and then I decide, all right, there's the closest way to land, so I'm going to start swimming in that direction. And it might be a really tough journey to get back there, but you're just kind of plotting it out, one step at a time. You see land getting a little bit closer, and you just keep going. And you have to be able to do that. And in fact, in that situation, that's probably what you should do. The difference between that and surrender, and I have to be careful here not to let this turn into giving up, but you guys will, I think, understand it, at least less on a logical level, but more on a feeling level. If you get the feeling of what I'm going to say with this analogy, instead of fighting against the waves and flailing around, you just allow yourself to sink under the waves. Under the waves, yes, if you stay there for too long, you die. But under the waves, it's calm, right? And you're getting moved around with the current of the ocean and with the bigger waves, obviously. But if you go down deep enough, none of that choppiness, none of that violence is happening. And that is a fundamentally different experience. What we normally do is we're up there on the surface, being thrown around, fighting against it, or at best accepting it, but staying on the surface. And surrender is like just, diving underneath, letting yourself sink down or choosing to sink down, and then feeling that absence of violence, that absence of choppiness, that complete calm is surrender. And this is something that you can do just sitting in meditation, for example. This is I think most of our experience with meditation is, like I was talking about earlier today, somebody asked me about like how do we start this journey, or like what are the first steps towards being able to do this? And I said, the first thing that you want to do is try to create some kind of silence or stillness, because you guys have experienced this a lot of times if you try to meditate, and I know that one of you has asked me about this, is your experience is like I'm going 100 miles an hour and then I just try to sit and meditate. It's like I was driving my car 100 miles an hour into a wall, and that impact, that stop, is basically like what you're putting your mind through. It's very difficult to be go, and then stop, and to get to a really great deep place with your meditation. Of course, you'll get quieter, but you're not going to get it as much as if you really kind of took the time to let things die down and wind down with your mind. And maybe it's like I have a ritual that I do before meditation. I'm literally in a quiet place. I'm praying, or I'm lighting incense, or I'm stretching, or I'm doing something that is getting myself to a place mentally where there's less noise. And then by the time I actually sit to meditate, maybe I do some deep breathing, maybe I'm counting the breaths, but when I settle into it, it's like I'm sliding into it. It's like I'm just allowing myself to sink down under the waves. And this is the way that we want our meditation to go. It's unfortunately not usually the way that it goes, at least for me. It still has more of a kind of a jolting feeling to it, and it can take a while in the meditation to get really calm, really peaceful, to that state of no mind. And it's in the beginning, it's like math. I have lots of noise, lots of thoughts, very difficult to be calm, very difficult, probably impossible to experience surrender, to get to a great place in meditation. So I just try to cut out. And what I said is, if you basically cut it in half, if I go from 1,000 thoughts to 500 thoughts, that's great. That's huge progress. It's still a ton of thoughts, and you're still sitting there and meditating, going like, I'm going insane, but you're still way better than you were before. And then you try to take that 500 down to 250, still tons. But if you keep having it and you keep getting fewer and fewer thoughts, eventually you get to the place where it's like I don't have that many thoughts, and sometimes I'll even get to one thought, or sometimes I'll just connect in the moment to the breath and have no thoughts. And even if it's just for this long, that's brilliant. And it's really just a simple function of having less noise, less thought. So the wall scroll here that we have on the dojo says Mushin, and Mushin is that state of no mind. No mind is not really an accident. It's something that we work towards. It's something that we are constantly trying to train ourselves to be able to do. We do this in the dojo, and we do this in our meditation, but also in our physical practice. So what we normally experience is I'm in class, and it's like I'm struggling to swim in the ocean, and I'm being tossed around, and the count's too fast, and I'm confused, and everything sucks. My partners are looking at me and judging me. I can just tell. Sifu saw that one time that I just screwed up, and all that stuff going on in your head, that raging storm on the ocean, is what we want to be able to just let go of. So in the moment in class, you can't just sit and meditate because someone's going to kick you, but you've got to be able to sink down beyond that into something, into whatever is deeper. So what we do is we connect to our partner. We start paying attention to what our partner needs. We start focusing on our own breath. We start focusing on the movement of our body. And when we connect to that, then that allows us to be out of all that stuff that we were doing before. It lets that noise just disappear. And now we at least get a glimpse of it, right? So one of the best things that you can do for sure to get beyond your ego and to experience surrender is to surrender to something bigger. And so in the dojo, you have something bigger. It's all of your fellow students, and it's martial arts in general. So I surrender to the process. I surrender to just knowing like, hey, I'm not supposed to be perfect right now. I am not perfect at this technique right now. And that's, what I can get in a logical sense. And then once I accept that, then I say, all right, so I'm just going to let it all go right now. And letting it go does not mean giving up. It means that I just connect in the moment to whatever's happening without there being anything in the way. So surrender is like a clearing of the channel. I am a channel, and just like the breath can flow through me if I let it happen. That's what we want to allow our bodies to do. We want to allow our bodies to do the techniques that we've trained them to do over and over and over again. And if we are in the way, if our ego is there and we're thinking about how we have to fix this or that, or we're judging or comparing, then we are in the way. So surrender is just let that go, and then the channel is clear, and now it happens through me. And it's a really nice thought, and it sounds way easier than it is. I could not probably make it sound as hard as it is. It's very difficult. But that's why we work on it so regularly, and it's why we want to keep coming back to it. I mean, that's why it's the scroll that's in the dojo. It's because we got to keep remembering, all right, that's what I'm trying to do. All right, I remember. It's not about me. It's not about like how good I look right now. It's just about am I doing it? Am I allowing it to happen? Am I with my partner? Am I connected to this process? So I wrote down a couple of other things that I want to talk about. When we talk about this concept, it's for a lot of us, it starts to get wrapped up in the idea of destiny, I think. So when we say surrender, in fact, when I Googled, I was looking for an inspirational story of surrender, and every single thing that I got was about surrendering to God and something from the Bible. And so a lot of people are like, you're surrendering to God's will. You're surrendering to the plan, to the divine plan. And for sure, if that is your belief, you can just stop messing with that, man. So if that's your belief, then that is what surrender is. You connect to what is going to happen. And you kind of recognize, it's like that saying, let go and let God. And you know that there is something that is supposed to be happening right now. And by me trying to be in the way and force something to happen, it's not going to work. So instead I just let go, I surrender, and it happens. The perfect thing, whatever is supposed to happen, is going to happen. So I have a great story that I'll read from Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. I lost the page, but I'm going to find it again. And this is the only story that I saw that I kind of liked, which had something to do with surrender and destiny. And it's going to take me a second to find it. So you guys just basically, talk amongst yourselves. Don't actually talk. There we go. So this one's called In the Hands of Destiny. A great Japanese warrior named Nobunaga decided to attack the enemy, although he had only 1/10 the number of men the opposition commanded. He knew that he would win, but his soldiers were in doubt. On the way, he stopped at a Shinto shrine and told his men, "After I visit the shrine, I will toss a coin. If head comes, we will win. If tails, we will lose. Destiny holds us in her hand." Nobunaga entered the shrine and offered a silent prayer. He came forth and tossed a coin. Heads appeared. His soldiers were so eager to fight that they won their battle easily. "No one can change the hand of destiny," his attendant told him after the battle. "Indeed not," said Nobunaga, showing a coin which had been doubled with heads facing either way. And this is pretty close to how I feel about destiny, which is like, destiny is real. I don't believe in fate and destiny in the way that a lot of people do, like the way that it is in the movies, which is like, I'm destined to find this, my one love, or I'm destined to be that or this. I mean it like in a total sense. Everything that happens is exactly the way that it's supposed to be. And if you believe that, then it has a tendency to turn into like, well, I guess nothing that I do matters, and I might as well just like, give up and okay, I'm destined to sit on the couch and watch TV and drink a beer tonight. No, I believe that what is supposed to happen, it will happen, and you got to mess with it by having a double-sided coin, and like you get to choose. Okay, I'm like manifesting destiny, right? I flip my coin and I know it's going to turn up heads, and I know I'm going to win this battle. I know I'm not going to sit on the couch tonight. I know I'm going to get to the dojo and do class, or whatever it is that's most important to you. And this at first seems to be very much in opposition to the idea of acceptance and surrender. But in my mind, it's not at all. Acceptance, for sure. Acceptance is, well, I accept where I am right now. I accept my circumstances, but again, I'm not giving up. I accept that this is exactly where I am, and then I choose that's where I want to be, so that's where I go. And I literally just start walking in that direction. That's my destiny. My destiny is I take this step in that direction, I take the next step in the next direction. So you create it as you go. And then surrender is like, I have something that's very important to me, martial arts. And I know what I want to happen. And I work. And I do the things that are necessary to create the situation so that it's most likely to happen. I work this punch over and over again so that when the time is right, the conditions are right, the punch will land. Which is very different from just like, I throw the punch without caring about what's going to happen. You can't skip steps, right? You work on it and you really care about getting that punch perfectly. And then, in the moment, if you're planning on being able to hit somebody in sparring with that punch, and you're thinking about it, and you are in the way, it will never happen. So, in the moment, after I've done all the work that's necessary, after I've created the circumstances, after I have created my destiny of landing that front punch, then I surrender. In that moment, I connect to my breath, to the moment, in Mushin. That's when the punch actually lands. And surrender is I'm getting out of the way and allowing what I have created to fully manifest. I'm not fighting against myself anymore. So in martial arts, to become the best that you possibly can be, to perform at the highest possible level, means that you cannot be there. It's one of the reasons that I love martial arts so much. And this is like, Sifu Brown used to say this all the time, Michael Jordan doesn't love basketball, Tiger Woods doesn't love golf, Baryshnikov doesn't love ballet. They love the state of mind that they are able to connect to and experience when they do these things that they have practiced so long and created this opportunity for themselves. And then they step out of the way and it happens. That's what Bruce Lee said. It's when it happens. It's not when I do it. It's when I have created the circumstances, but then I let go. I surrender. And then it happens. And this is actually the type of feeling that you guys have experienced in meditation at a certain level or in your physical practice at a certain level, where it's like you're going to drown. It's scary. If you sit to meditate and you actually kind of dive down into that place in your consciousness that is deeper and beyond where you have been before, your ego freaks out. And oftentimes the first thing that will happen once you get there is your ego goes, no, and it yanks you right back out, because your ego actually feels like it is dying in that moment, because it is so scary to let go of itself, to cease to exist in that moment. So this is what we try to get in our physical practice, and I think for a lot of people it's actually easier to do this in movement, so in Tai Chi or in sparring or repping forms or whatever, because you have that movement to allow yourself to drown in. And I know that the best way that I can explain this is I feel like when I'm doing Tai Chi correctly, for example, I feel like my body is constructed out of these smooth, it is a very weird image that I get in my head, but this is how it feels for me. My body is constructed of these perfectly smooth stones, and all the stones are just sliding around each other in a perfect way that has no friction, and the stones are this really satisfying gray color that I don't know why, but it really does it for me. And some cars these days actually have this color where it's it looks like a gray stone that's wet and it's got water going over it. That's what I feel like in Tai Chi. And sometimes I'll feel like the same thing when I'm just really in the right moment in a form or in sparring, when it just happens by itself. I feel like I am not me. I'm just made out of these stones that are kind of just moving by themselves. It's happening. So this is what we want to practice in class. This is what we hope to achieve someday in our practice, and then also outside. Because to surrender in the dojo is great, but just like anything else that we do in here, to be able to take it out into the rest of the world is really the point. So if I can create that situation and create that mindset and practice it over and over again, it becomes second nature for me. It becomes the thing that I do. And I can more easily, more readily just kind of slip into it. I'm going past time. Let's see if there's anything else really important. Yeah, I'll do too fast. So some of you guys saw we did the bottle cap challenge. Julia did one, looked really good. I did one, but I only posted it on my personal social media because I don't want you guys to see how good mine is. But it's when we started doing it, I'm sure this was your experience too. We set up the bottle. For those of you guys who don't know what I'm talking about, there's this thing that went viral on social media, and there were some martial artists and also some actors and people who don't really know what they're doing, kicking a bottle cap off of a bottle, and you have to get it very smooth to get it to look the way that we got it to look. You have to barely just kiss it, and we actually did it barefoot, which is more difficult. If you have a shoe, it's got that tread and a little extra stick. So watch it carefully on our Instagram page, and you'll see Julia's doing it with no shoes. It's just the skin of her toe barely touching the bottle, hardly moves at all. It's brilliant. It was not her first try. When I got it, it was not my first try. And as we started throwing these spinning hook kicks over and over again, for me it was I got something that was kind of close to it after the first couple of tries. But then I was really trying to I gotta get it perfect. And then so my ego got in the way, and I started repping it, and then I started being oh, am I ever gonna get this perfect? Am I ever gonna get it to be exactly the way that I want it to go? And then I just let it go and just kept doing it. And I to get the one that I actually got, or the one that Julia got, was probably 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 kicks in. But in that moment, in that kick, it was just like you just let it go and let it happen, and it's either going to happen this time or it won't, and it's going to happen this time or it won't, and you just keep going. And that repetition is kind of a fairly simple way to allow this state of mind to happen. You just pour yourself into that repetitive motion. And I'm reminded also of this challenge that I gave to the students back at our other dojo. Raise your hand if you remember trying to find the red spot. You remember trying to find the red spot? You weren't even a student at that point, but you remember it. None of you guys were here for the red spot? You weren't there? Oh man, the red spot was did you ever find it? You never will. It's probably gone now. So this was at our old dojo. I'll find a new red spot for you, Doug. Don't worry. So there was a random red spot. I'll tell you where it was now. It was in the bathroom. It was up on the ceiling, or like right close to it. And it was just like a little red splotch. And I saw it one day, and I hadn't noticed it before, and I thought, oh, this would be kind of a fun thing to let the students try to find this thing. It doesn't have a lot to do with martial arts other than kind of this topic that I'm talking about now. So I said, there's somewhere in the dojo, there is a red spot. I want you guys to find it. And right after that announcement, class ended, and some people started to like go around and look, and they're like looking on the wall, and then look over there, and they're like moving stuff around. And I said, it's not under anything. It's there. You can see it. It's not this. People were like, is it this? Is it the thing on the book? No, it's on the wall somewhere. But it kind of had this frantic nature to it, where people were just looking. It's like they look here for a second, and they look somewhere else for a second, and then they just give up. There's one student who found it, and it took him it was at least a week that it took him to find it. And you guys, some of you guys may have heard me say that Kevin found this. He looked every single class, like multiple times a week, for a while. And he was the only person that I saw who just chose a wall, and he looked like this inch all the way up and down, and then move over to the next inch all the way up and down, and he just had this really methodical way of going through every square inch of the dojo. And finally he came to me one day, and he's like, Sifu, is it in the bathroom on the ceiling? And I was like, yes! And it was like, I have never ever done this to any other student in the past, and I'll never do it again, but I couldn't help myself but high five him. It was so exciting for both of us. And I have a tear in my eye just thinking about it. And the coolest thing about this was that he surrendered to the process. He understood that I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to find it by just frantically looking here and then looking somewhere else. It's like I've got to actually just allow the process to unfold. And it might take me a week, it might take me a month, it might take me a year, but I'm just going to do it. And that, surrendering to a process is very important to us as martial artists and to us in life. And just like, any incredible feat of humanity, as soon as he did it and I told people, hey, somebody found it, then a bunch of other people found it. And I think they were like, they understood, okay, there is actually a red spot somewhere. This is not just Sifu messing with us. And it's possible to do it. And so they recognize, well, I can go and dive into this process and surrender to it as well. And I can have faith that it will happen for me. So some of you guys just didn't give it enough time in the process. But it's no different with any of this. A process exists for us to get to where there is to get to in practice and meditation and life. And we have to work the process, and we have to have, a logical part of it. There has to be a method set aside, but at the end of the day, we have to surrender to it. And surrendering is like having the faith, knowing that it will be okay, knowing that there is a light at the end of that tunnel, and if you go, it will happen for you. So, whatever of the 10 analogies that I used tonight works for you, but it should have that kind of a feeling to it, like you are allowing yourself to sink beneath the waves and be in that calm underneath. So try that in your meditation tonight. Try that in your practice in the future, and just see. I accept this is where I am. The next step is I surrender fully to whatever there is to, allow it to happen, to allow it to flow through me. Sit comfortably.